Jill, these talks are standard practice, but is there anything to be read into the timing of them?
They look as though they're slightly late for a parliament that's likely to go a full term. And what's quite interesting is, despite the fact that the Prime Minister has now authorised talks to take part, Labour doesn't seem yet to want to initiate them.
So what actually happens?
So what happens is the Leader of the Opposition speaks to the Cabinet Secretary, and then what normally happens is that shadow secretaries of state get in touch with the permanent secretaries of the departments which they shadow, and they start conversations. Usually a few meetings, slightly depends on the size of the department, and those really cover any sort of organisational priorities that the incoming government might have if there's a change of power. So if they need to have more people working on something, and it's particularly important if the incoming government really wants to reorganise the government machine, then you need the civil service to be working on that so that those changes can be ready to go once the change of power takes place.
But actual policy isn't discussed?
Not in the sense of getting proper policy advice, the sort of policy advice you go to ministers. So one of the things that the civil service will want to know is, what are your real priorities? What should we be looking for? They might have a bit of a discussion on that, but it's absolutely not to give policy advice. The civil service is still working for the government of the day. But they'll need to know, we really think these three things are things we want to get to go straight away. You'll need to have some people ready to work on those if we come in. And these other things, we might talk about them, but they're a bit less important to us. So it's that prioritisation that's really important. But the other important things about these talks are they give both sides a chance to size each other up, start to build relationships, and actually think about, what changes of working style will there be from ministers we've got to know quite well.
And a classic example of that, I suppose, would be 1997 when Tony Blair's government came in, and you had what I understand to have been a very relaxed Chancellor in Kenneth Clarke, as opposed to the incoming Gordon Brown. That would have been very different working practices.
It was incredibly different. Actually, this is one of the things that I think the Treasury, where I was working at the time, got really badly wrong, because we assumed Gordon Brown, really big figure in New Labour, seemed very self-confident that he would have a very similar working style to other big beast chancellors we'd had, like Ken Clarke, like Nigel Lawson. And the Treasury used to work in this way, where we'd have these very noisy meetings with lots of officials arguing with each other around a giant table. And then the most senior official there would turn to the Chancellor and say, "So, Chancellor, what's your view?" And Nigel Lawson and Ken Clarke would be perfectly happy to make a decision there and then. We discovered in 1997 that absolutely wasn't the way Gordon Brown wanted to work.
And that's what it is. It's getting used to a new administration, very briefly, a new way of working.
Yeah, new people, new relationships, new priorities, and potentially a different way of running government.
We shall see what the election brings. Jill Rutter, thank you for joining us.